Now we can explain whose shoes were standing on that chair. Two new polls in two key early voting states are giving us an idea how the 2020 field is shifting, and a previously little-known underdog is making some big moves. Former Vice President Joe Biden continues to lead in Iowa and New Hampshire, but he's not in the race. Followed closely by Bernie Sanders, but he's not a Democrat. The standout headline here is this: the 37-year-old mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, has surged into third place. Eugene Robinson, David Jolly remain here with us tonight. Gentlemen, I want to run just the shortest clip from the Buttigieg speech on Sunday, followed by Mike Pence's reaction today. We'll talk about it on the other side.
My marriage to Chasten has made me a better man. And yes, Mr. Vice President, it has moved me closer to God. And that's the thing I wish the Mike Pences of the world would understand. That if you got a problem with who I am, your problem is not with me. Your quarrel, sir, is with my Creator.
I worked very closely with Mayor Pete when I was governor of the state of Indiana. We had a great working relationship, and he said some things that are critical of my Christian faith and about me personally, and he knows better. He knows me.
Congressman David Jolly, did he get that right? Was Buttigieg calling out Pence's Christian faith?
As a Christian, Mike Pence is missing what an important moment this is for the Christian and evangelical community, but it's also an important moment for the country. We have a LGBT candidate who legitimately could be considered a top-tier presidential candidate at this point, talking about his sexuality in the context of his Christian faith. And the Christian family, and I consider myself a part of that family, has to wrestle with this. This is a moment not just for the Democratic Party, not just for the LGBT community, but for the country. We need a candidate because we need this conversation. And, you know, the neat thing that he's doing that no other Democratic candidate has done, he's approaching these issues of intersectionalism and identity politics in a way that is not preaching to the Republican Party as though they're not coming along. Mayor Pete's inviting people to that conversation. When he says, I disagree with Chick-fil-A's policies, but I love their chicken, he's talking to a community that needs to be invited to this conversation. It's a very special moment for the country right now.
Eugene Robinson, when a former mayor of New Orleans gives a speech on race, when a presidential candidate named Obama gives a speech on race, they had resonance. They lived on. People had a funny way of finding them on YouTube. It seems to me this speech on Sunday that he gave has resonance.
I think it does have resonance. It was a hell of a speech. It really was. And this is, as David said, this is a moment for that speech, I think. I saw some research the other day about explicit and implicit bias as determined by various kinds of tests that don't directly ask you, are you biased, but show you pictures and how do you react, what words do you associate with pictures of brown people or white people or whatever. And the point is that sexuality or sexual preference, sexual orientation, bias against gay people basically was way down, was down further than
fastest moving shoot I've ever seen in this country.
Further than race, than, you know, the only one that was up actually was weight. And sort of implicit bias against heavy people was up, but all the biases were down. But the sexuality was down further and faster than any other. So this is a moment for the country.
And that's part of your answer as to why this is a moment for the country.
We've never seen a public figure, and I know people do this on it privately and perhaps in different walks of life. We have never seen a public figure talk so openly about their sexuality and their Christianity. This is such an important national conversation. It's a special moment for the country.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.